offshore wind, solar. Dominion Energy is a leader in the clean energy transition. We're dedicated to providing reliable, affordable, safe, and clean energy as we support and invest in our communities in 16 states. Dominion Energy is building a clean energy future. Actions speak louder. Welcome to Actions Speak Louder, a program about Dominion Energy's path to a clean energy future and its community support. I'm Peggy Fox, Dominion Energy's Media and Community Relations Manager in Northern Virginia. Dominion Energy is committed to sustainable, reliable, affordable, and safe energy. We are laser focused on reducing emissions to achieve our net zero goal by 2050. Today, you'll learn about Dominion Energy's Strategic Underground program. If you've experienced a power outage, you might have asked a question. Why doesn't the power company put those lines underground? Well, guess what? Dominion Energy is doing that, and you will learn about this exciting program. You'll also learn what Dominion Energy is doing to bring broadband internet connections to underserved communities. Right now, I would like to introduce our guests. And first, we have Heather Montville, our Strategic Underground Program Communications Manager. Thanks for being here in studio with us, Heather. And also Karen Kinslow, and she is the Director of Grid Resiliency, and she joins us on Zoom. Thanks so much for joining us, Karen.
Hi, thank you.
Let me start off with the basics. To Heather, what is the Strategic Underground Program?
Well, first, we found that by burying the most outage-prone overhead tap lines, which tap lines are the ones that typically serve neighborhoods and homes, by burying those lines, we can reduce the number of outages or reduce the number of repairs that we make on a house-by-house basis that crews have to go to in order to restore the power following a major storm. So the Strategic Underground program was designed to do just that. It's an electric reliability initiative that is aimed at removing the most outage-prone overhead lines and cost-effectively replacing them with underground lines.
And that keeps a lot of outages from happening as well.
Absolutely.
All right, it's all good stuff. So look, we want to show you exactly what we're talking about. So take a look at this video, which explains how the Strategic Underground program will help keep the lights on despite bad weather.
You can't control the weather, but at Dominion Energy, we're investing in solutions to ensure the weather doesn't control you. After a major storm, tap lines or the overhead wires that branch off the main line typically sustain the most damage and take the most time and resources to repair. Rather than taking an all-or-nothing approach to this problem, we use data from the past decade to pinpoint the most outage-prone tap lines on our system. These are the lines we're moving underground to reduce outages in the most damage-prone areas. As these lines are identified, we partner with our customers on a plan to place the lines underground. And while outages will still occur, these strategic measures mean, overall, fewer repairs after a storm. Because our ground crew will spend less time investigating and untangling downed wires, they'll be able to get to critical repairs that directly affect you, the customer, as soon as possible. So your life can return to normal more quickly.
Now, I'm sure a lot of people want to sign up for this program, but that's not how it works. So, Karen, will you please tell us, how do people get this program?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure many of our customers would say sign us up for that. So we actually have a very data-driven program. We look at 10 years of performance history and use that to identify what we call candidate tap lines. And then we send our technical team out, and they will look at the outage history, they'll look at the causes, they'll make a field visit to see, is this really a viable project? And if so, then they will turn that into a project, and we move forward with going to convert to underground.
Okay, so it's not something people can sign up for. It has to do with data. So Heather, you're the person responsible for communicating to the general public and to customers exactly what the program is. If a customer is chosen to be part of this Strategic Underground program, what do they need to know and do?
Well, I think it's first important to note that it is a strictly voluntary program.
Okay.
So our customers signal their support for the program by signing an easement agreement, and that agreement allows us to install and make repairs to that new underground cable that we plan to install. we work with our customers on an individual basis, answering all of their questions, meeting with them, explaining what an easement is and that kind of a thing. And then at that point, they can choose to partner with us by signing that easement agreement. You know, if they choose not to sign it, then, you know, we may move on, but in most cases, you know, it's a positive thing and they want to move on with us. Besides that, there's not really anything that they need to do. We've really tried to make it as simple and convenient for them as possible.
So when power lines are moved underground, I know there's a lot of changes. And one of those is that I know that the transformers above ground are those silver barrel things, and then for underground lines are those green boxes. So how do you help people figure out how it's going to look?
Oh yes, so thank you for bringing that up. This is something that is like near and dear to my heart and so exciting to me. One of the ways that we want to show our customers what they can expect is using an augmented reality application that we have designed, developed, and loaded full of our equipment for us to use. Basically, we have an application loaded on an iPad that we can take out to the customer. We take a picture of their property where we have decided that we want that equipment to go and that the customer has agreed to, and we're able to place a transformer right there in the picture or pedestal or whatever it may be, swivel it around, move it back and forth until the customer's happy with it. It allows them to really have a visualization of what their property will look like before construction is complete, and it's really aided us in our ability to have those kinds of conversations with our customers.
And I want to make another point clear, and it doesn't mean that all the poles are going to be gone.
You're right. You're right. It doesn't mean all the poles will be gone. This is an electric reliability program, so our telecommunications partners have not established that same legislation that we have, so they have to make that determination on a case-by-case basis.
So those wires may likely still be on the poles.
They could be.
So, yeah,
they could be.
Just to make that clear. Not everyone understands how the electrical system works, and it's complicated putting lines underground. That's why Dominion Energy is filled with engineers, and Karen Kinslow is not only an engineer, she's a good communicator and explains in this video how the Strategic Underground program works.
During a severe weather event, most of the damage to power lines occurs at the tap line or neighborhood level of the circuit. Our analysis indicates that by converting just 20% of these overhead tap lines to underground, we can reduce the number of repair locations and speed restoration efforts by up to 50%. We use data on the frequency of outages from the last 10 years to select projects. And we then work with our customers to develop an underground solution that makes the most sense for each tap line. These projects require a partnership between Dominion Energy and our customers. And in some cases, we need to obtain easements for placement of our equipment on your property. We commit to communicating with our customers throughout each project, and we will notify customers before any work is performed on their property. During the construction phase, we install the new underground lines using directional drilling to minimize impact to the property. It is still a construction project with the need to dig inspection and safety holes along the cable path. We'll make sure we work with all customers to ensure their property is returned to a similar condition when the project is complete. This is a great program, and we are excited to be partnering with our customers to improve their reliability.
Okay, so now I want to ask Heather, what if a customer doesn't want his property dug up?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked, because we run into situations pretty frequently where customers are a little hesitant to partner with us because they are concerned about potential digging on their property. The good news is that we don't use traditional construction methods to install our underground lines. We actually use a trenchless technology called guide drilling or horizontal directional drilling, which eliminates the need for an open trench at all. We're actually able to go in underground and go 3 feet, 4 feet below the current grade and drill under driveways and fences and trees and landscaping and pretty much any other obstructions. So that really sort of eliminates that fear that the customer might have. But in addition to that, when every project is complete, we go back and we restore each customer's property to how it was prior. So that really helps them to understand that we're doing this for them and for their reliability.
Well, we heard in that video, Karen says this is a great program. How do we know it works?
Oh, absolutely. Our data has shown us that just by removing 20% of our most outage-prone lines, we can cut customers' outage times in half. So we're already starting to see the effects of that because we have removed almost 2,500 annual outage events from our system.
Wow.
You know, so that's just looking at the data.
Right.
Now, we also solicit feedback from our customers in the form of a survey at the completion of every project, and we have received overwhelmingly positive responses. You know, our customers are thanking us for doing these projects for them, and they're also letting us know that they've run into several situations where they know for sure they would have lost power and they did not experience an outage. So I think that's what makes it feel the most successful is when our customers are satisfied at the end of the day.
Well, let me go back to Karen and ask her this. And you know, it seems like most new developments have lines put underground, that all the utilities are underground. How long has this program been going on?
Yep. So Heather briefly mentioned the lawmakers encouraging some of or addressing these multi-day outage restoration events. And so Hurricane Irene in 2011 and the derecho in 2012 kind of really spurred on some of that discussion. So we developed this program in 2013 and started construction in 2014. So we've been going on for about 7 years now, and we've already removed over 1,700 miles of overhead line, and as Heather just mentioned, thousands of outages on this week.
Wow, I remember the derecho, and I remember being without power for several days. That was, and probably caused a lot of people to buy generators, that one did. But, you know, filling up the cooler and and everything like that. But, you know, being without power is traumatic. It's very difficult. It's, you know, the one thing that we don't want to see happen in an energy company. We want to keep the lights on, and that's why we do all this. But as we were talking before, just because you do get your lines underground, if they're moving from above ground to below ground, doesn't mean that you won't have an outage, does it?
Sure. So that's also a really good question, and one that we run into pretty frequently. You know, as we know, much of Dominion's system is above ground and subject to extreme weather. And while we do have programs that are aimed at strengthening those lines, we have to remember that the Strategic Underground program is aimed at removing the most outage-prone tap lines. So by removing those lines, we are eliminating all of those repair locations that our crews are sent to. So, you know, in general, we have the same number of people doing the work, but less work for them to do. So we are reducing outage times for all of our customers.
And Heather, I know you've been out and about, you know, talking to communities all over our service area. What do people say?
Oh, people love it. I mean, people love the idea. Who doesn't want their power underground?
Right.
I mean, you know, I think the first thing that people think is, yes, the aesthetics to have your power underground, but also it's more reliable. I mean, we rely on electricity more than I think we even realize. So when people go more than a few hours without power, they feel it. They feel it. So it's definitely a welcome when we come into their neighborhoods.
Okay. Karen, tell us a little bit about how long is this Strategic Underground program going to continue indefinitely, or is there a cutoff, or what exactly is the time frame?
Right. Well, as I said, we're very data driven, and right now the data is telling us that we have enough good projects, qualifying projects, to last us through 2028. So still quite a lot of time ahead of us and a lot of projects. So for those customers who are saying, you know, I haven't been converted yet, you know, you may be as we continue the program.
So how does it work? Do we already know? We already know the areas. We've already determined these outage-prone areas. It's not a continuing kind of thing.
Well, we have a forward-looking view. We do refresh the data every 2 years because things change, weather patterns change. We make other changes to our electrical system. But that's why I kind of said right now the data is saying we have enough work through 2028. But we'll continue to look at that and make sure we're addressing the right areas.
Right. I'm sure you all have thought about, you know, climate change, and we keep hearing we're having stronger storms. You know, does that play a factor? Are we having more stronger storms that you know of? Are we seeing more outages and more events?
So I think weather patterns are definitely changing. You know, no 1 year is the same. You can't predict where a storm will hit or how many storms that you will have. There is a lot of talk that they are more severe. You know, really, that's why we continue to look at the data and make sure we're addressing the right areas so that if these storms are more severe, our customers are not having more severe impact and we are getting their power on.
Yeah. Yeah, something else I just thought of, what if you live in a low-lying area and are starting to experience flooding? What happens if those lines are underground and it gets flooded? Is that a concern?
So we do address environmental concerns at the beginning of every project. That is, each of our projects goes through a comprehensive environmental review that does look at flooding. So while we would want to stay away from areas that are below the floodplain, our equipment can handle, a certain amount of moisture.
Yeah, it has to. It's outside. It has to be water repellent. Well, what would you like people to know? Karen, what would you like, I know that you're the one who deals with the public, but Karen, what would you like the general public to know about the Strategic Underground Program?
I'd say, the Strategic Underground Program really is showing customers Dominion Energy's commitment to making their power more reliable, and that we will work with all of our customers to make sure their needs are met. As Heather said, that we treat their property with respect. We make sure that it's left similar to the way it was before we came in, and we're really looking to improve everyday reliability, but most especially resiliency related to severe weather events.
And what's next with the program?
So with this program, we're going to continue, as I said, to find the right projects and work them and go forward. But Dominion Energy isn't stopping there. We've developed other programs that we've been starting related to, one in particular, putting more intelligent devices out on the line so we can see what's happening on the power lines, both overhead and underground. We can make dynamic changes to the power flow. If there is damage, we can reroute power to customers and get them on sooner while we still do repairs. Looking at hardening the infrastructure, we've got a great program right now called main feeder hardening. Heather talked about the Strategic Underground Program as those tap lines through neighborhoods. The main feeders are the big, generally three-phase lines down larger roads, and we're looking at rebuilding them to new standards. We continually investigate new materials and new standards, and so we have a program where we're rebuilding main feeder lines to, again, make outages go away, and if there is damage, it's less severe and we can restore power faster. So we're not stopping, really. We're just continuing to see what we do to make sure we're delivering safe, reliable power to our customers, because that's what matters.
You know what? That is a great segue to the next important topic. Thank you very much, Heather Montville and Karen Kinslow, for telling us about the Strategic Underground Program. I have to say that very slowly so I don't trip up over it. But no, it's a great program. Thank you so much for letting the public know about it. But we do have another important program we want to tell you about. We want you to know what Dominion Energy is doing to bring broadband service to underserved communities. Over the past year, we've learned how essential it is to have a strong internet connection in your business and your home. The pandemic laid bare the digital divide, and those without a strong internet service or broadband struggled. If your class moves online and you can't get online, it's a huge problem. Dominion Energy is stepping up to help.
Welcome to the overview of Dominion Energy's Rural Broadband Program. At Dominion Energy, we know that actions speak louder. Across every part of our company, we're transforming the way we do business to build a more sustainable future for Virginia and support the communities we serve. But the harsh reality is many Virginians live without easy access to broadband internet. Dominion Energy can help. We're in a unique position to bridge the broadband gap in rural areas as we move forward with efforts to transform our electric grid and connect renewable energy resources. We know that home internet access is vital for today's society. School coursework, remote education, access to healthcare, telemedicine, job searching, and working from home are just a few activities that are powered by access to broadband internet. Dominion Energy proposes to provide middle-mile fiber optic cable infrastructure to bridge the gap to rural locations. Local internet service providers will connect customers interested in broadband internet by building the last-mile infrastructure to serve these customers. Our partnerships are making it easier for local internet service providers to reach rural communities unserved by broadband. While Dominion Energy has the ability to install fiber optic cable to better serve our electric utility customers, we need to form additional partnerships with property owners to be able to use our infrastructure to help serve those without sufficient access to broadband internet. If a supplemental communication agreement is necessary for your property, a Dominion Energy representative will contact you. Dominion Energy is partnered with All Points Broadband and is planning to build over 200 miles of middle-mile fiber optic cable in the Northern Neck. All Points Broadband plans to extend the last mile further into each county to ensure universal access for all unserved residents. We're working together to overcome the challenges that are too great for one entity to tackle alone. This project crosses Stafford, King George, Westmoreland, Richmond, Northumberland, and Lancaster counties. Closing the digital divide to ensure more homes and businesses can access broadband internet is critical for economic growth. It's about social equity and public safety. This is why King George, Westmoreland, Richmond, and Northumberland counties have endorsed the Northern Neck project. Dominion Energy will work with property owners along the project route to ensure understanding of this important agreement. Property owners signing the Supplemental Communications Agreement are helping to move this project forward for the entire community. We thank you for your support. Looking forward, Dominion Energy is actively working to create additional partnerships with internet service providers to reach localities without access to broadband internet within our electric service territory. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this important project. To learn more about this initiative and how it affects your area, please visit our website at dominionenergy.com/rural broadband.
And now I'd like to introduce Stephanie Harrington. She joins us on Zoom. She's with our Rural Broadband program with Dominion Energy. Stephanie, what can you tell us?
Well, Peggy, we appreciate this opportunity to talk about this very, very important program and our partnerships across the state. And as viewers just saw in that video, we totally understand the importance of broadband connection, not only to make sure that homes and businesses have access, but that people can take advantage of telemedicine. And actually, Peggy, it's interesting, there's actually some research out that shows that homes that have broadband access, the home values go up. It's really an important feature that we all need in our homes and businesses. Now, what's really interesting, though, about Virginia is that our legislators saw fit to enable these partnerships. In 2018, through the Grid Transformation and Security Act, we were requested to put together a feasibility report. And so what you're seeing now that's actually happening in communities across the state was an outcome of 2019 legislation. And then just recently, the pilot legislation has become permanent. So there are still over 500,000 residents across the state that don't have broadband access. And we're working as quickly as possible to partner up with localities, local governments, and internet service providers to bring this broadband to communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not easy though, Stephanie. And one thing we want to make sure people understand is that we're not bringing the actual service. We're just more building the highway for the internet service providers, correct?
That's correct, Peggy. And that's a great clarification as well. So it's going to be the local internet service providers that will actually be bringing the service to homes and businesses. But if it were easy to do, they would have already done it. It's been very difficult to make these projects financially viable and without making a lot of impact in the community. So by partnering with Dominion Energy, what these internet service providers are able to do is take advantage of the infrastructure that we already have. We're reaching homes and businesses today with overhead power lines. These power lines have been in existence for a long time, and we are moving forward to just simply attach fiber optic cable along these power lines in order to help the ISPs reach the pockets of unserved customers. And one other point I'd like to make, because it was highlighted in the video that your viewers just saw, is in many instances when Dominion Energy is adding fiber optic cable, it's just for our own operations. And so our easement rights that are existing allow us to do that. In other locations and in other specific properties, we will need supplemental easement rights from the property owners in order to have the capability to lease that fiber optic cable to third parties like the internet service providers who are eager to connect homes and businesses in unserved communities.
I'm sure everybody is eager to have a broadband if they don't have it. What areas does this program cover?
So the name actually is a misnomer. We call it the Rural Broadband Program because it was initiated through that legislation that I referenced earlier. But actually, when you look at a map and you look at some of the metro areas in Central Virginia, Eastern Virginia, and there in Northern Virginia, we're actually seeing in some parts of the counties, you could argue they are rural and where development has expanded. And so it's really all across the state. I would point out that it was our partners, peer utilities in southwestern Virginia, where this legislation, this concept was initially developed. And we're seeing it in our more urban service territory that Dominion Energy reaches with our customers. So the bottom line is wherever there are pockets of unserved customers is where the ISPs are going to go. And they might be in a very populated county. But we know here, and I'm speaking to you today from Richmond, there's areas within 20 miles of where I'm sitting downtown that don't have high-speed access.
And we can say the same for the Northern Virginia area. There's places up here. So definitely something for people to keep an eye on. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the Rural Broadband Program. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'd just like to add that we are constantly updating our website with new partnerships. I just did that today. So please visit dominionenergy.com/rural broadband for upcoming projects that might be near you.
Perfect. Stephanie, thank you so much. And thanks for watching Actions Speak Louder. For more information, you've heard where to go to learn about rural broadband. We also talked about the Strategic Underground Program. You can learn more about that as well at the Dominion Energy website, dominionenergy.com. Always remember to put safety first, and have a great day.